What's going on, everybody? I wanted to touch on a topic real quick. This is going to be a pretty short video, but I just want to touch on this real quick. This is a question I get fairly often, actually, is people are asking, will my ammunition hurt my gun? Now, they're referring to ammunition types aside from brass case ammo. So we're talking stuff like the zinc, steel, copper wash, and aluminum. Now, what people are most concerned about is what kind of damage it's going to cause to their firearms extractor. So I want to touch on that real quick and just give you guys give you guys what I know about it. Now, to quote my experience of why I semi know what I'm talking about, before I started working as an armored car guard, I worked at a machining and welding shop for 12 years. Actually, most of my life, now I think about it. My father owns a machining and welding company where we weld, machine. We deal with all types of metals that you've probably never even heard of. And I also know the hardness, the Rockwell strengths, everything like that of them. So it gives me some ability to comment on this. Just getting over a cold, sorry. So the question you're going to get, or the question that I get, a lot of people get, you'll see on YouTube, is will steel case ammunition damage my extractor or hurt my firearm in any way? Generally speaking, most YouTubers, big channel guys are going to tell you no. Like, I shoot bazillions of rounds, a wolf, all this, all that, to quote James Yeager. And technically speaking, that is true. Now, this is technically speaking. For one, ammunitions are made out of different type of metals. As you can clearly see, like, we've got Blazer aluminum, Chinese 762x39 steel case. You've got the zinc-plated 762x54R. We've got copper-washed 762x51. And then we've got just your standard brass 762x51. All right? Now, generally speaking, most people are going to shoot brass because it's going to do what they think is the least damage to or what they think is not going to damage their gun. In reality, it's going to do the least damage to your gun, more specifically your extractor. Now, what do I mean by least damage? Well, if you go by the mindset that only steel case and aluminum case will hurt your gun, and you only ever run brass case, by that mindset, nothing on your firearm, aka the bolt, extractor, firing pin, should ever wear out. But believe it or not, extractors, they still fail. You know, look at the military, look at law enforcement, look at most people's experience. At some point or another, they have to replace the extractor on their AR-15, or the extractor on their SKS, or the extractor on their Glock, or whatever. Because these ammunitions do wear down the gun. Like, that's just what we call wear and tear. Now, what I mean by that is, if you look at metallurgy and you look at the science behind it, any ammunition or any metal, so in order to damage a metal, let's say as hard as what your extractor is made out of, you need a steel that is equal to or greater than the strength and Rockwell hardness of what your extractor is. Meaning, in order to actually damage it, you need something that's at least twice as hard. All right? Now, so people will ask, well, then how is it possible that something like this can damage can wear down my extractor, or something like this can wear down my extractor? Well, that's wear and tear. Now, if you, let's use an example here. Let's take a sledgehammer. Really, really hard, all right? It's just a solid hunk of steel. And you take a giant rock, okay? You start smashing at that rock. You will break that rock into little itty bitty pieces. That is a fact. But if you look at that sledgehammer, it is going to be damaged. It is going to be marred. It's going to be scratched. And you could very well even take a little chip out of it. So how is that possible? Because a sledgehammer is harder than a rock. Well, that's wear. Just because the metal on your extractor is harder than the metal on the ammunition you're shooting does not mean that it won't hurt your gun. Now, if you look at, technically speaking, the steels that these types of rounds are made out of is nowhere even close to as hard as an extractor on any firearm, or bolt face, or whatever you're afraid of wearing out. It's nowhere near as hard. Now, if we go through it, I've got, I managed to get my hands on the different types of ammo. So brass case, technically speaking, is going to do the least damage to the overall parts of your firearm, just because it is the softest of the metals. Now we continue our way on. The next softest, if you look at metallurgy, is going to be the aluminum case stuff. Now this is the CCI Blazer, and people worry about this ammo because the aluminum casing is heat treated. So it is hardened via heat treating. So why does that not wear out my extractor? Well, again, it's nowhere near as hard. They give it a very minor heat treat, just enough to get the gun to, so that they can shape it and make sure it holds together. Because if they didn't heat treat this and I squeezed this as hard as I could actually bend this. That's why it's heat treated. It just helps it keep its form, feed reliably, and work. Now, steel case ammunition, you look at it like the Dominion or the Zinc, these generally speaking will do the most damage. That being said, the damage being done is still negligible. You'll never run into well, I'm not gonna say you'll never, but let's say you shoot 15,000 rounds of the brass stuff and your extractor wears out. You'll shoot probably about maybe 13,500 before the extractor wears out on the steel case stuff. Now that's not an exact figure. I'm just giving you guys like a guess. Like, will it wear your extractor out faster? Technically speaking, yes, because it is slightly harder than brass case. Will you notice that difference unless you're keeping an exact count of your ammunition? Absolutely not. What's going on? So that's that. And then you got your copper wash stuff. Now this stuff is interesting. I found this is Chinese Norinco. It is a steel case round that's copper washed. So what it is it's still technically steel case. Piss off! Go away. It's still technically steel cased, but the reason they copper wash it is because it doesn't have the friction. One of the biggest gripes about steel case ammunition is the friction it causes inside your magazine. So you'll suffer a lot of failure to feeds if you got a full magazine and a weak recoil spring. It's because the friction point on steel is much lighter. So they tend to rub easier compared to brass case or this copper wash. The copper wash is basically to solve feeding issues. Just to give people an idea. But generally speaking, whoa! Get down! Was not expecting a dog to be here today. Ah, fuck, I'm just gonna go with it. I'm finishing the video up anyways. The same thing goes with 12 gauge. Aluminum case, steel case, brass case. With 12 gauge, you're not gonna notice a difference. It's a 12 gauge, it'll work fine. That's all you really need to know. Anywho, I hope this answered a couple questions that people have. I'm just trying to give you an idea. Like, for those of you who are worried about steel case ammunition hurting your gun, don't worry, it's not gonna hurt your gun none. Just, maintain your firearm. If you start to have extraction issues, your extractor's worn out. Anywho, thanks everybody for watching, and I will see you all next time. Right?